Hello, and thank you for tuning in today. My name is Francisco Chacon, and I am an adjunct professor of real estate and the built environment at the Burns School of Real Estate and Construction Management. Today, I'm going to be talking with you about building an Earthbag tiny structure in my hometown of Taos, New Mexico. First off, I'd like to thank you for tuning in today and taking time to listen to my story. I'd also like to thank the Burns School for giving me this opportunity to share part of my personal experience. A brief outline for today's presentation will include an introduction. I will go through briefly my own personal journey towards a greater understanding of sustainability in the built environment. And finally, I'll end the presentation with a slideshow of some of the progress we made on an Earthbag structure in my hometown of Taos. First off, I'd just like to start off by sharing a little bit about me. My professional career in the early years consisted of working in higher education, in student facilities, and student activities. Towards the end of that career, I started taking an interest in construction and renovation and more sustainable facility design work. It led me to a career transition. As a part of my career transition, I took an educational sabbatical and traveled around the world to participate in sustainable construction projects and also to learn about sustainable principles through permaculture. Finally, I ended my sabbatical by completing my studies and receiving a Master's of Science degree in real estate and built environment. In the fall of 2019, I had the opportunity to start teaching a class in the Burns School, which is entitled Triple Bottom Line in the Built Environment. This course is an exploration of the importance of real estate in the built environment and its impact on how we live, work, and play. Students who take this class are exposed to those principles that impact their daily lives, but they're also introduced to the concepts of sustainability and the triple bottom line, which if you're not familiar with the triple bottom line, it takes the concept of a single bottom line profitability business model, and it introduces the concepts of paying attention to the people and the planet to create a more sustainable and long-lasting business model. So now I'd like to just take you on a journey of my own personal path to understanding sustainability in the built environment. And it starts out in my hometown of Taos, New Mexico. Taos, New Mexico is a beautiful community in northern New Mexico with world-class amenities such as the Taos Ski Valley and cultural sites that have historical significance such as the Taos Pueblo. Taos, New Mexico is a 4.5-hour drive by car from Denver, Colorado, due south. And located within Taos is the Taos Pueblo, which has been designated as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. It was established sometime between 1000 and 1400 AD and has the distinction of being the longest continuously inhabited community in the United States. I was fortunate growing up to be able to attend the Mission Church of San Francisco de Asís in Ranchos de Taos. This is a culturally significant architectural building as well. It was built between 1772 and 1816, and it was designated as a National Historic Landmark in 1970. As a child, I have fond memories of the time that I would work on the annual replastering of the church. The church is made out of adobe bricks and has an earthen plaster that needs to be replastered each year to maintain the integrity of the structure. It's a painstaking process, but it is done with love by the community. All right, now I'd like to fast forward to another time in my life where I discovered another cultural and historical land site called the Greater World Community. Now, this is a sustainable subdivision north of Taos, New Mexico. And I discovered it in 2016 when I had the opportunity to stay in an Earthship nightly rental. But the Greater World Community is basically a sustainable site where ecologically built homes are constructed. There are currently 130 sites on the subdivision, of which 78 are built out. You might ask, what is an earthship? Well, an earthship is a type of passive solar earth shelter that's made of natural and recycled materials. The earthship concept was developed by architect Michael Reynolds in Taos, New Mexico. And earthships if you're wondering what that name means, think of it as if we were isolated on Earth and we had to have everything we needed within our ship to survive. And that is really the concept. So, in order to have everything you need to survive, you have to have a structure. Well, Earthships use natural and recycled materials. For their heating and cooling, they use passive strategies that are very energy efficient, such as passive solar or geothermal heating. They create their own energy production through solar, wind, or other means. There's water catchment and reuse. And what's really important in Taos, New Mexico, we only receive between 8 and 11 inches of precipitation every year. So it's important that we catch and conserve and reuse as much water as possible. But Earthships also have another novel idea. They also have food production means, and they also contain their waste on site. So I learned these principles, and as I mentioned, these are some photographs from the first time I stayed in an Earthship, and it literally changed my life. This visit in this Earthship is what caused me to have a career change. But what I experienced, it was a cold February day with snow on the ground, and when I walked into this building, I was just greeted with warmth and sunshine, and I felt like the sun was kissing me. And acoustically, what was significant is that I couldn't hear anything. There weren't these loud systems that were churning air into the building. It was just a naturally, passively heated and cooled building. And there were lots of opportunities for building within the structure. So I caught the bug and I decided that I needed to learn more about these structures. Over the next few years, I participated in Earthship construction projects around the world. One notable experience that I had was Earthship Island in Kanawa, Indonesia. And the purpose of this construction project, basically 60 of us went to this island to construct an Earthship model. And we were building this Earthship to demonstrate to the Indonesian government ways to create more sustainable tourism options. It was a really outstanding experience. And one of the key things that I learned here was just the concept of harvesting local materials. Since we were building on an island, everything had to be boated in. And it was just much better if we could use natural materials on the island than to have to bring those in from other places. Uh, After that experience, there were two students there who encouraged me to go to Thailand to a permaculture design course. If you're not familiar with permaculture design, basically it's a way of designing your homestead or your business to be more in line with nature. And there are 12 principles that support permaculture, and there are three major values that support permaculture principles. And that's earth care, people care, and fair share, which are very much in line with the triple bottom line of people, planet, and profit. So these principles resonated with me, and I've taken on permaculture as one of my key learning objectives personally. But at the permaculture design course, I also had the opportunity to build some earthen structures. And this is where I learned how to use cob, which is a earthen plaster material that can be used to build natural buildings. It was a really eye-opening experience for me. I completed my sabbatical by attending the Burns School of Real Estate and Construction Management, which was an invaluable experience. At the Burns School, we teach the life cycle of the built environment model, which goes through three major areas of the built environment life cycle, which are real estate development, project delivery, which is the design and construction of those facilities, and an asset management, which is the operations phase of operating the buildings once they've been constructed. But if you notice on the model, the outer ring is devoted to sustainability throughout the entire life cycle. And it was this emphasis that led me to, as a student, to participate in the Solar Decathlon competition. Now, the Solar Decathlon competition is a national program run by the Department of Energy. In the Burns School, we participated in this competition to design a net zero retrofit on a property on the University of Denver campus. We were awarded a $25,000 grant to start construction, and this project is currently ongoing on the University of Denver campus. As a matter of fact, if you're a student, I encourage you to get involved with the Solar Decathlon project if you have any interest in sustainability in the built environment. All right, now I appreciate you going through that journey with me, and that kind of formulates the basis for my Earthbag tiny structure in New Mexico. I just want to give you a little bit of a background of what I was thinking. This piece of property that I'm developing is eventually going to be my homestead, but I need to establish a small structure so that we can have basic shelter on the property and a place to install electricity for our future build. So I went through a number of possible ways to build this structure, and it came to be that the most effective structure for me to build would be an Earthbag structure. So I'll go through that process with you now. So it starts off again at that beautiful place, Taos, New Mexico. This is a picture just west of the build site. The site is 1.06 acres, and this is what it looked like in 2017 before any development. It's just a cleared field ready to be established. In 2017, we did a little bit of site excavation to create some planter cells where we can eventually plant trees for protection from the wind. This pile of earth is earth that we used for our Earthbag structure. So it's a material that we harvested locally. During our site excavation, we also built an access road into the property. Now, I had heard about Earthbag construction, but I've never actually participated in any Earthbag construction activities. So the first thing I did was I bought a book. Simple, went to an online retailer and bought this book for $25 and read it. It didn't have all the details I needed, so I actually went to another reliable source for rabbit holes and places to find information, YouTube, and I found a lot of knowledge about how to do this. So just some tips. All right, so this is the property. We call it Campo del Sol, basically, which means field of sunshine, and has the most beautiful sunrises every day. The first step was in the actual structure was to excavate a foundation. It's a very small structure, 10 foot by 12 foot are the outer dimensions. So it didn't require an extensive foundation. We were able to get away with building a gravel trench foundation. So we just filled the trench with gravel and compacted it with one of these compactors. It's called a tamper. Then the next step in the building process was starting to stack up the earth bags on the wall. So each of these layers of bags is called a course. And between each course of bags, we lay two continuous lines of barbed wire. The purpose of the barbed wire is to add tensile strength to the wall structure. All right, the next step in the process involves framing out the doors. And in this case, we had a very large window for passive solar energy. So the window is as large as the door. So we frame those out first. Next, we actually brought volunteers in. So people who were curious about learning how to build Earthbag structures, they came and they helped us. And we all had a really outstanding time building and sharing stories and fellowship through this process. This is what the Earthbag structure looked after our first volunteer event. As you can see, it's very slow going. It actually took a lot more time than I expected. But when you don't have money and you have time, this is kind of the route you might have to go. All right, at this stage, this picture is showing, by this point, the wall structure was about 3.5 feet. So we drove in 1/2 inch rebar. We drove it in with sledgehammers through the bags so that we could increase the reinforcement of the walls. And as you can see in this photograph, some of the volunteers are working on incorporating that barbed wire between the courses. Now I just want to take a little bit of a break to share what life is like on a natural construction project. We started out each morning, we had a full kitchen. We started our morning with nutritious, energy-filled breakfast so that we could work hard all day. But as you can see, that sometimes working hard, you have to take a break. We had very little shade, so we had to, fit our relaxing shade activities into a small 6 by 8 foot shade area. Of course, all pups are always welcome. In this photograph, you can meet Kiyoshi the pup and his owner, Andrew. At the end of each workday, we would make sure to take time to celebrate our accomplishments and share time with each other. In this picture, you're seeing the volunteers are working on having a spa mud experience on their feet while enjoying cold beverages. And of course, we'd have a meal to cap off each construction day. So always a good time when we have volunteers. We make sure to treat them right, and we always have a lot of good progress. Of course, you wonder where you go. Well, we actually built a composting toilet, and this site for the future will actually contain a composting toilet until we're able to build the house on the property. Now in this slide, you can see a view. This perspective is standing on the wall, looking into the structure before we put the roof on. The interior dimensions of the structure are 9 foot by 7 foot. So it's pretty small. Right, in this photograph, you can see where we completed the wall structure. And at the top of the wall is a wooden bond beam that's constructed out of 2 by 12 lumber. And basically, it's called the bond beam because it is what is used to bond the roof to the wall structure. Basically, we've secured the bond beam with 4-foot sections of reinforcement bar. Again, just to add that reinforcement. The next step in the process includes, we actually used lumber from a local supplier to build our roof structure. In this photograph, you can see where we've incorporated a vapor barrier using the black plastic. And you can also see on the roof structure, we have started to incorporate siding. We used recycled materials from a shed that we tore down on my father's property. All right, in this slide, there's an opportunity to see, this is just very rudimentary plastering that's going on the site. I think I can maybe share a little bit of video of that. This is just, hand plastering in the traditional ways that I was taught growing up. All right, in this slide now you can see that the structure is completely plastered, and we did this because the polypropylene will not stand up to the sun for a long time. It actually deteriorates in the sunlight. So before we closed the project for the winter, we had to make sure to completely plaster and cover it. And this is what the job site looks like on the last day before we closed it up before winter. At this point, we had installed the doors and we used some foam insulation to seal up the windows for the winter, before we move on. This is the final photograph that we took of the structure before we left the project. And this is a picture of, community. This was our most attended volunteer day on the job site, and we had such a great time. And I think for me, that was really the value and the benefit that I learned about this. We didn't have a whole lot of money for this project, but we had some social capital and we were able to get some of our friends to come and help us build this structure. So I think that social capital goes a long way in helping with the affordability if you're trying to take on some sort of a natural building project. Another thing I would just like to encourage you to do is, if you're interested, especially if you're in the construction realm and you've never actually had any build experience, I encourage you to take on any project. It may be a shed, it could be a small outhouse structure in your backyard, anything at all. I recommend just taking on a project and doing it on your own from start to finish. I think it's really valuable. So those are my parting words. I'd like to thank you again for tuning in, and I'm sharing on the screen some of my contact information. Please don't hesitate to reach out. I'll be available anytime. I appreciate and welcome any type of inquiries. So thanks for tuning in. Have a great day.